Hello and welcome back to another episode of Asheville Real Estate News. My name is Nolan Freeland, and you are all in for a real treat today because I am not hosting today's episode. With that said, we have an amazing guest today as well. He is the president and co-founder of Altamus, a full-service property management firm specializing in commercial real estate. He holds the professional designation of Certified Property Manager, or CPM, as you're often seen as kind of a tagline on someone's name, which is awarded by the Institute of Real Estate Management and considered to be one of the industry's premier real estate management credentials. His career life spans more than 20 years and includes valued experiences that range from Wall Street to Main Street. Since 2004, he has been immersed in all aspects of commercial real estate, including brokerage, sales, leasing, design, development, project management, facility operations, and property management. With that said, let's give a warm welcome to our guest, Wes Reinhardt, on the show. I hope you guys enjoy.
Well, Wes, thank you so much for joining us on the show. As we've connected a little bit ahead of time, mentioned that we really haven't had anybody talking about the commercial space from a management perspective ever on the show. So really excited to dig into that. So thank you and welcome.
Well, I appreciate the invite. It's good to talk about the commercial real estate market here in Asheville. I've been a part of it since about 2004 when I relocated here, and it's really it's a passion. The business is dynamic here and ever changing.
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to start. Asheville's I always call it, it's like a sticky place. A lot of people come and then they stay, even if that wasn't their intention. Are you local, or how did you end up here in Asheville?
Yeah, so my quick story is I married a girl from Asheville, but we met in college and we went back to New York, which is my hometown, where I pursued a career on Wall Street and unrelated to real estate. And in 2004, as I like to tell people jokingly, I sort of had an early midlife crisis and said, I don't want to spend 3 hours a day commuting. I don't want to not be able to go to my kid's soccer game. I want to have a better quality of life. And so a lot of things factored into that, and we basically took a leap of faith. And I quit my job. We sold our house. We bought a house here, literally sight unseen, and we just had a rather radical personal career change, and we never looked back. And I think back now about that move, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I actually did that. But I did that with with a lot of people that were sort of, rooting me on and encouraging me, and people that created opportunities for me to come to Asheville and reinvent my career. And so that took place in 2004, and here we are, 2020, and
just a short moment later, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and as the cliche goes, in the blink of an eye, here we are. So I first came to town and I literally enrolled in real estate class, knowing that I was going to have an opportunity to join a local commercial real estate firm of a guy who had a marketplace here, and that was John Spake with Spake Real Estate, and he's a friend, and he provided an opportunity for me. At the time, I didn't know him that well, but I enrolled in the real estate class. I became licensed and just basically started going to work and going to work on doing some commercial real estate, and did that for a couple of years. Then sort of before the Great Recession, I got hired away by a local developer who I call local. Actually, he was from Florida, and he had a couple projects that he was starting here in Asheville, and he hired me as his real estate broker. But that turned into an opportunity where I pivoted out of the brokerage business and went to work for his real estate company as an employee, and I did that for 7 years. And then in 2014, beginning part of 2015, of Dewey Property Advisors, who I had previously worked with at Spake Real Estate. And the net of it was that we both felt that there was an opportunity to provide commercial management in the Asheville market, that it was basically an underserved solution. And I had been doing that in the capacity of working for the real estate development company, and fairly passionate about that, and thought that there was a good opportunity. And that's where we started. And we started Altamus Property Management at that time with the idea that we would be a sister company to Dewey Property Advisors. And so we are two separate companies, but we really function pretty significantly in collaboration. The idea being that, Altamus was only going to handle lease administration, management, accounting, and all those things. And Dewey Property Advisors handles the brokerage, the investment sales. I happen to hang my license on the Dewey Property Advisor side, and I do on occasion have the opportunity to do some brokerage deals and investment sales, and I love that part of the business. And so while I'm dedicated to building the property management business, which has been a 5-year project, I also do love to be involved in the brokerage side as well.
There is something about getting a sale done and seeing something go all the way to completion. I'm sure probably would never get old, right? Like just being part of that transaction, the ups and downs, the excitement. At least for me, I know every time it's new, I love it every time. The feelings, you kind of recognize them, that they're always new in its own certain way. So
it really is. And it's kind of why I love property management, is something different every day. There's a new challenge. It's a lot of problem solving. And again, our focus is primarily commercial property management, but we do straddle residential and multifamily. And so, yesterday specifically, with the remains of a tropical storm that is blowing through here and came through yesterday with a lot of rain. I mean, our life, property managers, was fairly challenged. And so, again, you don't know what the day brings, but oftentimes with rain and storms, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, and a stormy night, you always wake up with your fingers crossed, hoping you don't have any voicemails.
Exactly. And so I'm fortunate that we have an amazing team. I've got a director of facilities. I've got maintenance technicians that are in the field. And just an incredible team, and that's really been the secret to our success is the people and how they've developed into these roles. Which, for the most part, all of our employees didn't really come from a traditional property management background. They've sort of been
kind of grown into it
on the job.
I think so. I kind of looked like you've had a couple of big pivots that you've gone through. As we've talked about, you had the big move, you got your broker's license, you did that for a couple of years, then you totally shifted, worked with the developer, then worked with Dewey, and then started Altamus. As you look back on that, has there been any common thread as far as what you think kind of created the framework for you to have the confidence or the ability to those are pretty big pivots, all of them.
And I really failed to mention the biggest one, which was when I got out of college. I went to work for my dad's business on Wall Street in the commodity futures trading arena.
Oh, wow.
So I was a commodity futures pit trader. If you've seen the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, that trading floor at the end of the movie is actually where I worked. And I worked there for 10 years. And for various reasons, and I love working in the industry there, and I loved working with my dad, but didn't see that there was a really big future in the futures market, ironically, in the way that trading and technology was affecting that industry. So I made a pretty bold move in 2000, and I left the trading floor in New York, and I took a job at Bloomberg.
Okay.
And Bloomberg is a financial information services company, and they sell this amazing data system and analytical system to Wall Street, and they wanted ex-traders like myself to be a part of that. And I went through a training program there, and so I do look back. It's certainly not been an easy road, but I look back and I say, wow, how did I do that? And I took a lot I'm not going to say I took such financial risk, which I did, but I just took risk that it wasn't like, I'm going to buy this building and hopefully lease it up. I mean, I know what that's all about, but I guess I took some personal risk and tried to reinvent myself along the way. I don't know what I attribute, any of these big pivots to, other than the time spent, I think, on the trading floor allowed me to be able to look towards the future because that was our business. And so I became sort of ingrained in that forward-looking mindset. And then when in any market, whether it's real estate, the stock market, the bond market, or in my case, the commodity futures market at the time, those markets change by the minute, right? So you can have a really strong opinion about the direction that the market's going to go, but you have to be able to say, wait a minute, stop. It doesn't look like that was the right decision to be long at that point. I better change course, and now I better get out of my position. I better reverse my sentiment. And so that training ground really allowed me to not get caught up. Like I think a lot of people in whatever careers they have, allowed me to kind of say, okay, if it doesn't feel good this way, it's okay to make a change. And so, I don't know, as part of my upbringing, I don't know. So I have to give a lot of credit how I got here.
Yeah, I think the ability to pivot from a decision that's already been made is like a really good skill set to learn because I know just for me, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in, well, I made this decision, so I have to see it all the way through. But sometimes I think you can make a decision, take 2 steps and be like, oops, wrong decision. Never mind. Let's go somewhere else. And it's not always easy to make that pivot, I guess.
It is so true. And I've seen many, I've seen friends and colleagues and family members, if you will, that can't make that change. And they're caught on this treadmill and they just, or if they're forced to make a change, it's uncomfortable. And I've seen colleagues in other job capacities where they were asked to change course and they couldn't understand why. And so it is a skill set that somehow I've been able to adapt or evolve to. And I do think it translates really, really well to property management because every day is different, and one day it's a retail tenant that you're talking to, and the next day it's a residential tenant, and those worlds can be very different. And so you've got to be able to talk to different markets and to different trends.
Navigate the different personalities, the different conversations, the needs, the wants. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces there. Talking about moving pieces, just staying on that theme a little bit. So you've been doing property management, or on the commercial side for a while here, and then with Altamus since 2015, 2014.
Yeah.
So I got into real estate 2012. It feels like a lot has changed in the last 6 years. I'm sure you've kind of have seen or felt a similar sentiment. If you were to look back over the last, say, 5 years, what are the biggest things that stand out to you as far as the changes or maybe the lack of changes that you've noticed or haven't noticed?
That's a great question. I'm going to go back even further than the last 5 years. I'm going to go back almost 28 years, which is how long I've been married. And I got married here in Asheville and didn't really know Asheville. Of course, my fiance at the time was a native. And, I remembered all my family and friends that were coming to our wedding. They all decided that they were going to get a hotel, the one hotel or the generic hotel that was on Airport Road, because that was proximity to where, the wedding was going to be held. And there was 1 or 2 choices on Airport Road. And I wish at the time that I knew what I know about real estate today, because you could have thrown a dart and hit any piece of property on Airport Road and you would have hit a home run, if not a grand slam. And so I have that perspective. In the last 5 years, look, this is a tourism and hospitality driven economy in Asheville. And the growth that we've seen in that arena is nothing short of impressive. I would say that, similarly speaking, from a market sector, the multifamily apartment complex has certainly been the dynamic driver of development here in Asheville, and it continues to get absorbed. Yeah. Certainly with the Corona pandemic going on, it's been a disruptive force in the hospitality side, and of course there's been some growing pains politically as it relates to the hospitality industry. But from my perspective, I think it's been a net positive. Asheville is basically on everybody's top 10 list. You can go to a cocktail party in New York and you can tell somebody that you're from Asheville and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to visit. I hear such great things. And, it's a privilege to be able to say that. And this economy, from my perspective, being service driven and hospitality driven, it wasn't that long ago that restaurants and retailers, and I mean, 10, 15 years ago, it was not an easy layup to be in the retail or the restaurant business in Asheville. And that's I think what I've seen is that more people have come to visit and they've spread their dollars, and it's actually been very impactful to the small mom and pop retailers. That's basically my client base. We're mostly mom and pop property managers.
Yeah, talking about the change in the food industry resonates with me. So in 2010-ish, 2011, I was living out in Black Mountain, but I was trying to get a job doing something, and I got a restaurant job downtown Asheville. And I remember the first time parking and being like, man, I feel like it's kind of like a little sketchy down here. What's going on? And he's got the job and everything. And then just seeing that, I was only there like year and a half, 2 years, but even in that time period, like your average tip size started going up significantly. And so I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of noise or complaints about being such a driven economy on tourism stuff, and that, the industry workers aren't being taken care of. And obviously there's some truth to that, but I think that it's also hard to ignore the fact that you're making more money on tips if there's better options, more options to work in higher paying restaurant jobs than there were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because they're catering to people who are coming here for vacation. And if you're on vacation, you typically are going to spend more than if you're at home.
Absolutely.
So I think that positive is I think it's pretty evident if you've taken the time, and not that there aren't some, downsides, but I mean, overall, like, it's there's not every town in the world that you get to walk away with $200-$300 on tips every night, on some nights, right? Like that's a big, it's a good day.
Yeah, I've heard this is pre-pandemic, but some of the most notable restaurant and bars, the bartenders there, I'm hearing professional bartenders, they're making big money.
Yeah.
I mean, not small money, like eye-opening money. Now, look, that's not to say that everybody's in that arena. And I agree. I think that there have been some growing pains, and we have to be, I like to call myself a conscious capitalist, and want to elevate the people that we work with and promote the businesses that are tenants in our properties and things of that nature. I will say this, 10 years ago when I was, still, I was here and I was a couple years into the business. Asheville downtown wasn't a 7-night-a-week destination, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, on a Friday or a Saturday, sure. Come to Asheville, go downtown, hit the local, restaurant scene, and it's pretty busy out on the streets. But, again, you go on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Wednesday or even a Monday night, and, there's
things
people
are
on the
happening.
streets.
Yeah.
There's things happening, and that's fantastic. Yeah. And we need to continue to celebrate that and make sure that we are being good stewards of the economy, being sensitive about how we grow, but making sure that we don't, kill the golden goose, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good way to put it. Don't want to kill the golden goose. On the commercial side, I know that from things that I've heard and read, it seems that anybody who's been in commercial real estate during COVID, it's been really challenging. And I'm sure you've heard stories from tenants, and there's been a lot of conversations. I know at least with us, we don't do anything commercial. It's just residential, of just talking with people like, hey, what do you need? How do we help? Like everybody needs to survive, or else it kind of defeats the purpose. Like this goes both ways. How do we get to the other side of this? Personally, all of our tenants were great, and, there was good dialogue back and forth. I'm assuming you probably had a comparable experience, but thought you could maybe talk about that and maybe what you've heard nationally as well.
Yeah, very true. The last, 7 months at this point, I think a month or two ago, I told some friends or colleagues, said, man, I feel like I've been running a marathon in quicksand. It's been a lot of work. Just speaking as it relates to Altamus Property Management, we've got about 500 tenants, most of which are mom and pops. We represent landlords that have been incredibly benevolent towards their tenants, and that's important. 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing, and that has been the sentiment. That is. We have seen, landlords that have flat out abated rent. We have seen landlords that have deferred rent to the end and or restructured lease terms and, changed a tenant to a percentage rent and done a lot of creative things to see these tenants through. And, not everybody's going to make it. Not every business operator has the
flexibility,
the flexibility or the skill set to pivot their business model. We've seen many doing it and many doing it right. I think there's going to obviously be some that may not make it through, but it's been a lot of work on the property management side because when rent relief is provided, there's lease administration, there's lease amendments that need to be generated and executed, and so that's been an interesting process, and everybody at my organization has been really a part of that, and even on the Dewey Property Advisors side, we've all been very active in dialoguing with the tenants and the ownership group and trying to come up with solutions that will get us through. The idea is how do we get through this? I've seen really anecdotally, it was funny. I was walking around Black Mountain about a month ago, my wife and I, and went into a gallery and recognized some of the artists that were being featured in this gallery because they're actually artists that have tenancy in some of our River Arts District properties, but some of their art was being showcased. And the gallery operator said that, and this is anecdotal, I don't have any proof of this, but said that, their summer was one of the strongest summers that they've ever had.
Wow.
And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, they said their August numbers year over year were stronger than they were the year before. And I think that was great for Black Mountain, and that may be an outlier, but
yeah, it's a good outlier though, either way.
It is.
And
so I don't think that perfectly, aligns with some things that I'm seeing here. I know we have a lot of artists that are part of our portfolios, and it has not been easy, and it is a struggle. And so, everybody just has a story and of success and ways to pivot. We're just trying to help those tenants when we can.
Yeah. Maybe it's a shorter answer, or if it's, I don't want to necessarily get into an elongated conversation around this. I'm sure it could be, but what's the balancing point that you do between tenant relationship, property owner relationship, when you're negotiating these highly emotional decisions, right? Like, hey, we can give you 50% off because the landlord's being amazing that he's even offering that. And maybe the tenant can't get there for whatever reason, or like, how do you see your role as that? Are you a mediator or are you an advocate? Like, how do you position yourself up to not burn bridges by accident, I guess?
That is such a great question. And it's a role that I literally am in every single day.
Yeah.
And whether it's a pandemic or not. And so, you do have to have some, sense of balance, and there's a little bit of politics probably involved. At the end of the day, we represent the landlords. We work for the landlords, right? But the relationship primarily is between the tenant and us. They pay the rent into our property management company. They call us when they're having a infrastructure issue, right? So we have to be hypersensitive to their needs, and we want to be hyper responsive. We need to communicate, accordingly. It's a tightrope at times, and sometimes I will literally have to say, "Listen, let me remind you, I represent the landlord here, but let me go back to them and advocate for you in this case." And that's a lot about how my conversation might go. And sometimes we get the black eye, and that just kind of comes with the territory sometimes. And it doesn't have to be pandemic related. It can be about, it can be a tenant that doesn't understand how a lease is written in the commercial real estate world. And they think that the landlord is responsible for this particular maintenance item, and they're not.
Yeah,
and,
fair enough.
You have to make that, you have to say, oh, let me show you section 12.2 on your lease, which says the air conditioning is your responsibility. And, we can provide you with resources that we have relationships with, and happy to do that. And, but that's sometimes the hard part, is that communication. But we work through it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. It's all, I can imagine it's interesting. So I just kind of wanted to hear your perspective on it. Talking about, not killing the goose that lays the golden egg on the economy side, kind of going back to that from the commercial, when we had a couple of different conversations with people on the show about, like affordable housing and things like that. And the common theme and the thing that makes the most sense to me is like, how do you raise the wages, right? And so we've had some good things, I think, that have happened, like Amazon distribution center coming in, these opportunities that make it not so self-reliant on the service industry. I know we were talking a little bit before we hit record about another big change that's happened, but just anything that you might be able to add on the commercial side of different companies or businesses, or if that's the right approach in your mind.
Yeah. So, look, Asheville is a very interesting market. We're a tertiary market. We're not a secondary market. We're sort of a tertiary market as it relates to real estate. Job growth, as you said, has certainly been anchored in the hospitality and the service industry, but some pretty humongous news for Buncombe County broke this past week. This was long rumored in the commercial real estate realm. There was a top secret name. Nobody knew who the entity was. It finally turns out that the news is that Pratt & Whitney is going to be building a manufacturing facility here. And they're going to be investing $650 million, I think, over the next 7 years. They're going to create 800 new jobs, where, the average wage is going to be $68,000 a year, which is going to be about 60% above the average in Buncombe County. And so that news, that's got to be, that's a Fortune 500 aerospace company, or Fortune 50 aerospace company. And that job growth and that economic development for Buncombe County and Asheville is a game changer, an absolute game changer. And, that's a deal that was put together by I'm sure the economic development folks in conjunction with the Biltmore Farms company, because it's going to be developed on their property. But seeing that kind of opportunity come to Asheville is really impressive. What that means for the future, I think we have the opportunity to see a lot more of that. And I know that there's the political will to bring more of that here. And I think we need to cultivate that. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it is a big deal for all the right reasons, as you mentioned. I know that when the Amazon distribution center came here, I thought it was a really big deal too, right? I think it just levels up and creates more upward mobility just in the job market sense. But then there's also a lot of people who feel like these types of moves are destroying the fiber of what Asheville is.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that some of those things, like you just like change is happening, you kind of just deal with it. But do you think that that's a concern that can be addressed, or it's just one of those things like, hey guys, like this is just part of it. Like this is what's the next step, and we all just need to figure out how to grow together.
Yeah, again, I think the most important thing is to have a multifaceted economy, right? You can't have a two-legged stool. Right? You can't depend on hospitality. You can't depend on restaurant workers, all good stuff. But we need an underpinning. And, in my mind, a multifaceted economy of jobs is what's going to give our marketplace a long-term future. And so, that's where I would weigh in on it. Yeah. Do we have to develop consciously? Do we have to be mindful about how we, about paying folks living wages? Absolutely. Those are critical. Yeah. And then how that translates into housing, because let's face it, as you well know, and housing is not inexpensive in Asheville. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest myths actually about Asheville. It's like, oh, I'm going to move to Asheville. I'm going to sell my house and buy a new house for 50% less. That's not necessarily true.
Well, yeah, I guess it just depends where you come from. I definitely know there's people coming out of state, from the north, the south, out west. They just sell their, $600,000 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and they can buy one for half the price here. They're stoked. And then, if you're a local, you're just like, this is insanity. What happened?
Well, that's very true. Yeah.
And so I think that's tough. We had last year. Her name's escaping me. I think it's Stephanie, who is the president of the TDA. And we had a great conversation, and I just felt that her approach was really good. It's like having people come, even as tourists, is a good thing, because so many people move here because they came here originally to visit. And then if they're bringing jobs or small businesses, or even if they're working remote, they're bringing money in that helps raise the collective industry. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I'm just wondering on your end, how many of the businesses, do you have any feel of how many of these small businesses that are in your all's portfolio are non-Asheville local folks, people who have decided to move here because they love the city and then they're trying to build out their own business here?
Man, that's another great question. Off the top of my head, I would say the majority of our 500 tenants, whether they're residents or whether they're artists or whether they're a retailer, are not. They're here because they want to be here. They want to embrace the Asheville lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it satisfies more than just their career ambitions, if you will. It's a lifestyle ambition, and so I knowing the people that I interact with on a daily basis, I don't know too many that can say that I'm a native here at all.
Yeah. Well, Wes, any thoughts on about what's next for you? What's next for Altamus? What's next for the market in general? What do the next 6 months, 6 years look like?
So, I mean, look, we've had the good fortune at Altamus to basically have doubled in size for the first 4 years of our growth.
Congratulations.
We stand at about, a little over 1 million square feet under management. we're fortunate that that we happen to manage the Grove Arcade in downtown Asheville, which is a very high profile, sort of our signature property. But we have an eclectic portfolio that ranges from, industrial and River Arts District properties to traditional retail properties as well. That said, what I see here is, one, we're going to continue to have headwinds as it relates to the pandemic. Okay. And that's just from an economy, whether it's, a retailing sector, or whether it's the office sector. I think that there's going to be continued headwinds in that regard. But I continue to be overall very bullish on Asheville, in migration of people that want to come here, that have basically proven that they can work their job remotely. So why delay happiness, and let's get to that happy place of Asheville, right? Mm-hmm. I think that Asheville should leverage their 100-year history or more at this point of being a place to convalesce and to be well, right? I mean, people came to the mountains, way back in the day to convalesce from tuberculosis and things of that nature. And I think that from that perspective, that's why we're seeing a lot of foot traffic in Asheville. Still, people are saying, hey, we can get to Asheville within a half a day's drive to at least half the population of the United States, right? So, but as it relates to our business and where I see, I continue to see opportunities of how we're going to grow our portfolio. We're in that mode. We want to add and build relationships with property owners. I do see, and I would tell you, the River Arts District is going to continue to see an evolution of development. We do see out-of-town investors, out-of-town private equity that wants to come to Asheville. We've seen that in the hospitality arena over the last 3 to 5 years, where hoteliers have, built hotels, and they're not necessarily from here, but have identified Asheville as a place to build the next flagged hotel or the next independent hotel. And so what we're seeing is people that love, or investors that like the Asheville story, that want to invest in a tertiary market because maybe there's not as much opportunity in a secondary market or even in the first market, but I think that trend is going to continue. And we're seeing that, and we have conversations with investors that are planning the next Asheville project, and how that gets done is we want to help guide those clients that may be looking for investments here and an opportunity, but we want to also make sure that we're building community, and that we're building community in a caring and conscious way, that is not solely about profiteering, but it is all about elevating and improving. And so it sounds like that sounds like lip service, or sounds like a cliche, but we really believe that where we stand.
I don't think you're getting year-over-year growth at the numbers you shared if it was just lip service. People have to believe that. People have to feel it, or else people aren't going to be buying into the vision.
Well, yeah, and look, as I've told my colleagues, property management is not rocket science, and we are not putting a man on the moon here. This is like simple block and tackle, follow up, say what you're going to do and do it, and make sure you're communicating. It's really good. I actually hate to say it on the podcast because people are going to be like, hey, it's not that. Just I tell everybody, just focus and be responsive, and people will recognize when you do a good job.
Yeah.
And I think they are, and I think that's proof in how we're growing. Humbly, we're very humble about how we've grown, and we want to help the next investor or the next small business operator, buy a property or take occupancy in a property that that we oversee and
Yeah,
what we're passionate about.
I think on the residential side of things, I always say is like probably 90% of our problems can be solved by just listening for 20 minutes and not saying anything. Just let somebody express themselves, and then it's like, okay, we can pick that, and then just come through, and so much gets solved. But
and we're both being real estate people.
Yeah,
we love to talk, as you can tell, imagine, right? So I have to tell myself to just, hey,
don't talk yet. Yeah, just tell me more.
I've probably said too much already today.
No. This has been great. But Wes, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you and connect with you if they have property that they need to lease out, or they're looking for space, or just, they listen to us and they're like, man, I need to talk to Wes. How does somebody do that?
Yeah, would welcome any inquiries. They can reach out to us look us up on the web at www.altamus.com, and that's spelled ALTAMUS.com. You can also email me at Wes, Wes.Reinhardt @altamus.com, and I'll spell it out again for you. Yeah. It's WES.REINHARDT @altamus.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Wes, thank you so much for taking some time this morning. Round 2, because we had bad connection the first time, so I'm glad that this time went smoother.
Listen, this has been great. It's been my pleasure to talk to you and talk about real estate, and appreciate you taking an interest in what I might be able to share.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, guys, if you're tuning in, if you listened to this, you enjoyed it, please share with your friends. If you have any questions, check the show notes. We'll have Altamus and Wes's information there so you guys can reach out to him. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.